program for you today. We have some association updates and statistics, which is great. But before we listen to all of that, we have a really special guest speaker. Lawrence Yun is the Chief Economist and Senior Vice President of Research at the National Association of Realtors. He oversees and is responsible for a wide range of research activity for the association, including NAR's existing home sales statistics, affordability index, and home buyers and sellers profile report. He regularly provides commentary on real estate market trends for its 1.4 million realtors. Dr. Yun creates NAR's forecast and participates in many economic forecasting panels, among them the Blue Chip Council and the Wall Street Journal Forecasting Survey. He appears regularly on financial news outlets, is a frequent speaker at real estate conferences throughout the United States, and has testified before Congress. He also participates in industrial economists discussion group at Joint Centers for the Housing Studies of Harvard University. He has appeared as a guest on C-SPAN's Washington Journal. Dr. Yun received his undergraduate degree from Purdue University and earned his PhD from the University of Maryland at College Park. Please join me in welcoming a very big deal, Dr. Lawrence Yun.
Well, thank you, President Katie, for the introduction and for inviting. Great to see many of you. I was last visiting Quad City maybe 5 years ago, trying to remember. And I remember the association leadership took me out for a good Iowa hearty lunch. So I remember very well. So. The pandemic has flipped our life upside down. The face mask, social distancing, and certainly in the early months of the pandemic, this time last year, we were completely frozen. We didn't know what to do. How do we go to grocery store? If we show a home, touch a doorknob, and accidentally touch our face, is that a death sentence? There was a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. Now we have a little better understanding of how it can be transmitted and how to prevent it, and also the vaccination moving well, along with the fact that the housing market, once the economy came out of the lockdown, consumers were seeing a record low mortgage rates, simply too good to give up. So they rush into the market, and home sales, what a surprise, exceeding the pre-pandemic activity. But recently, the sales are still strong, but the growth is less strong as before. Say back in October, November of last year, it was running about 20% above 1 year ago. Now it is only seeing about 10%. In some markets, essentially neutral, meaning no gain compared to 1 year prior. So what could be the reason as to why the sales are less strong now than before? And can we anticipate, say, maybe a slowdown, affordability challenges? So what's ahead? I speak better with the PowerPoint slide. So let me put that onto the screen and go over the market condition and the forecast. All right. So this is the overall US home sales market, the unit sales. So 2018, all the way through pre-pandemic, it was fairly a boring housing market, essentially moving sideways. If there's 100 home sales in the area, another 100 home sales, no meaningful increases. Then the April, May, scary times, really big declines. During this time, we heard from many local association presidents, and that's why at NAR, we always appreciate all the volunteer work that local association president is doing. So I think everyone should thank Katie for her role this year. But we heard from local association leaders to say, what is the realtors to do if we cannot sell home during this lockdown period? So as part of the first stimulus package, we wanted to assure that small business loans are available. So we pushed the Congress and President Trump at that time to say, let's assure the money gets out there. And the unemployment insurance benefit for the first time ever for independent contractors. I know as realtors, you don't want unemployment check, you want commission check. But in the period of the great uncertainty and lockdown, at least something was available. Then once the economy reopened, you can see the home sales surging. But the question is, are we beginning to top out? No longer seeing that 20% growth. If we look at the newly constructed home sales market, essentially a very similar pattern. So 2018, prior to pandemic, very little growth, then little decline during the lockdown, then just surge once the economy reopened. But then in February, you see that sales activity beginning to weaken. So again, question becomes, is it topping out? Consumers are facing higher prices. Consumers are now seeing a little bit higher mortgage rates. So is this the cause for topping out in unit sales? Answer is no. Consumers are in the market. Consumers want to buy a home. We simply don't have enough inventory. Inventory level at an all-time low, drastically low. And also for any of the potential clients that you may have who are asking the question, are we in a housing market bubble? Because home prices are rising, it's a frenzy condition, multiple offers prevalent, and you simply show this chart to say, look, it is completely different from 07, 08 when we had that foreclosure crisis. First, the inventory level were sky high back then. Today, we are not anywhere close to that, and I don't anticipate any meaningful increase in inventory. I want more inventory, but I don't really foresee a great relief on the inventory front. But the other story is that back in 07, 08, we had those funny mortgages, subprime lending, overstretching people's budget, adjustable rate mortgage that reset at higher rates people cannot afford. Thankfully, nearly everyone taking out mortgage today are taking out a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, sound underwriting standards, so completely different. We are nowhere anywhere close to any risk of a price decline, especially in the Midwest, where Midwest prices are very affordable, relatively speaking, nothing to be concerned over. Only New York City and maybe San Francisco could see some price adjustment, but for the rest of the country, especially in the Midwest, it's the question of how fast the prices will continue to increase, or will the appreciation tame down given the current inventory situation. One unique aspect, and you may have actually heard this someplace in the story, a news story someplace. So I am overlaying inventory, which is the blue line, with a realtor membership, which is the orange line. We are seeing a record high membership. Somehow people are hearing of the strong housing market and they're saying, well, I want to give it a try. Some people think it's an easy business. They quickly realize how difficult it is. It takes multiple years to get the client base, from outstanding service, referral, recommendation, all that takes time. So, but some people just want to give it a try, and the membership has risen. We have no control over this, and we are agnostic about it, whether it increases or decreases, but it is what it is, and we have more members than number of listings. So anyone with a listing, it is as good as gold. But those without listings are really feeling, what do I do? So right now it's very competitive environment in the marketplace. If we look at the price point as to where the inventories are declining, it is essentially at the lower price points where the shortage is most acute. If you go up the price points, inventory declines are manageable, or in the case of $1 million and over, it is actually above 1 year ago. We have more inventory choices. And if you look at the home sales, where the home sales are occurring, is dominated by $1 million. I should not say dominated, it's still a small market share, but the $1 million home essentially has grown by 80%. Say in your area, there was a $10 million home sales in 1 year, well, the following year is close to 20, essentially saying that the $1 million homes are doubling. but the big portion of the market will be in the 250,000 range. And the increases in the 250,000 range is only modest, or if you go below that, the sales are not clicking. And the reason why the sales are not clicking at the lower price point is, going back to the prior chart, no inventory. Nearly every realtors tell me that in the area they work in, if they had 20% more inventory, that would have 20% additional home sales. There are plenty of buyers. We just don't have inventory condition. Another way to illustrate that buyer demand remains very strong is the following. This is days on the market. So from the time that it is listed until time contract is signed, So what you generally find is that the days on the market rises during the winter months. Well, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, Americans want to take a time out, spend time with family. So they're saying, well, winter months, homes linger on the market. Not this winter. This winter, no let up. People were looking at their iPhone to see any new alert on the new inventory popping out over Thanksgiving dinner, and they were ready to move. So the market, days on the market, very, very swift. Plenty of buyers looking to buy a home. And amazing part, in Iowa, 23% of sold homes that were sold were above the list price. So this is showing that quite a strong demand condition. If you look at the nearby states like Minnesota, 51% of the sold home actually sold above the list price. So it's quite an amazing, it's a nationwide phenomenon. So many homes are being sold above the list price. The appraisals, they're trying to do their best, but sometimes people are willing to put additional cash above the appraisal value in order to get that home. One concern going forward is that mortgage rates will be rising. It's already rising. 2.7% absolute low that was experienced in December, January. Those are done and over. So if you have some clients who remember the 2.7% and say, I just gotta wait until mortgage rate drop back to that level before deciding. Well, it's gonna be a long wait, and maybe it may not even happen at all, because most likely mortgage rate will continue to increase and may even reach 3.5% by year end, which means that it may be better to lock in the rate sooner rather than later. Why do I say that? Well, because the blue line is rising. So the red line is the mortgage rate. Blue line is the government borrowing rate. So when the US government borrows money, they have to pay interest rate. And right now they need to pay a little higher interest rate. Why? Because rising budget deficit, high national debt, financed partly with printing of the money, and the bond investors are getting a little nervous to say, wow, huge budget deficit. I want a little higher interest rate before I lend you the money. So the blue line is rising, and anytime blue line rises, it's gonna push up the red line. So the mortgage rate will be rising, in my view, as we proceed through the upcoming months. So again, I would say it's probably better to lock in the rate sooner rather than later. 3.5% average is likely in December from current 3.0%. Step back for a second and say 3.5% in December. Is that really bad? And you say, well, that's not really that bad at all. 3.5% if you think about it. Now, people have missed out on 2.7%. So people who got 2.7, congratulations, you got the bonus rate, great market timing. But 3.5% by December is still not that bad a rate, especially if we are creating jobs. So as long as the job creations continues. The other factor that I'm monitoring closely that could push up mortgage rates, even into 2022 and beyond, is that inflation rates are beginning to rise. This is partly from printing of the money. For people who remember the 1970s, you go to grocery store, prices were rising 10%. Then you go to grocery store again 10% more expensive. During that time, mortgage rates were running about 12%, 13%. When there is high inflation, mortgage rate will automatically rise because from the lender's point of view, the money that is lent out would have lost in value when it's returned. Only way to compensate for that loss in purchasing power is to say, I need to charge you a higher interest rate. So if the inflation rate continues to rise, then it could cause the mortgage rate to be a persistently higher condition. Recently, NAR President Charlie Opler with several other people met with the economists from the White House, the Biden administration. So we raised the issue about inflation. And the perspective from the Biden administration is they believe that this inflation is transitory, meaning that wait a while, then inflation will not be an issue. It will go down again. So that was the remark. And I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. And here's why I think the inflation could be stubbornly high. First, gasoline prices are rising, and there's no indication that the oil prices will be falling. So gasoline prices already at a 5-year high. I know the realtors drive a lot, so gasoline prices, it begins to pinch the pocketbook. So it's already at 5-year high. The other part is that the rents, apartment rents have been falling during the pandemic. And that's because in the first few months of the pandemic, many people lost jobs, and especially young adults. When they lost jobs, they went straight to parents' basement. But now what we are seeing is that people are coming out of the basement. So the rental demand collapsed in the second quarter of last year during the midst of the lockdown, but now the rental demand is steadily beginning to pick up. So if the rental demand picks up, then this rent growth, which have been decelerating, will pop back up higher. So that will be another source of inflation. I mean, certainly for real estate investors is a good news, but from the overall consumer prices, it's going to begin to pick up. So another sort of persistent inflation impact, which could again edge up the mortgage rates going forward. Now, let me turn to the job market, because job market shows that April of last year, 12 months ago, total disaster. Our life was flipped upside down, and some people, real true disaster in terms of loss of job. 20 million Americans lost jobs. How do I put the figure of 20 million? Well, prior to the pandemic, America experienced the longest economic expansion ever, 10 straight years of job creation. Over that 10 years, we created 20 million jobs in America. In a single month, all undone. 10 years of progress undone in a single month. Then May, June, you see some job creation as the economy will reopen, and also the first stimulus measure, if you remember the $1,200 check, along with unemployment insurance, small business loan, that provided some support. Then towards the year end, things were beginning to fizzle out, which is the reason why President Trump had the second stimulus, which everyone had about $600 additional into their bank account in December. President Biden came in and said, no, that $600 is too insufficient. We want to raise that number, so we're going to give another $1,400 for most Americans in order to support the economy. Now, of course, there is no free lunch. So it is supporting the economy, but as you saw, larger budget deficit means a higher government borrowing rate that translates into higher mortgage rates. So everything has connection. It's never a free lunch, but at least it's trying to provide some support for the local job creation. Now, thanks to the vaccine, both the research on the vaccine, along with the production and now distribution, America may be reaching a point of herd immunity by sometime autumn this year, according to medical experts. Let's cross our fingers. Let's hope that's the case. If that is the case, I can easily see European countries getting extremely jealous of America and angry at their government. Spain, Italy, Germany, if they go into another lockdown in autumn while America is back to normal, they will be asking their government, what is Europe doing for us? The whole country is a museum, good thing, but we're not producing new vaccine. We are not, we don't have the technology like Facebook, Google. What are we doing? So there will be a lot of questions raised if America is back to normal in autumn, while many of the European countries are sort of stuck with possibly another lockdown conditions. Let's look at the job market across the country. So Iowa, right in the middle of the country, Compared to 12 months ago, it is down 5.1%. That's about the national average. Nationwide, the jobs are down about 5.1%. If you look at southern states, say like the Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, it is down a little less. There are only two states with more jobs now compared to 1 year ago, Idaho and Utah. They have actually more jobs today than before. The governors in these states essentially said, look, coronavirus is dangerous, but we will not shut the economy down. We have to just please be careful out there. So they have actually more job creation. If you look at New York, Governor Cuomo had an opposite strategy. He wanted to contain virus, so he said strict lockdown for a longer period, but it's hurting the economy. They're down massively, 10.8%. Now, Hawaii and Nevada, because they're tourism dependent, they're down as people are not traveling, but you see some variation that occurs across the country depending upon whether they had a strict lockdown or more relaxed lockdown conditions. But Iowa is pretty much right in the middle of the pack across the country. And this is another way to view the job market in the US, total jobs. So from year 2000, we had some job creation in 06, but those are artificial job creation from subprime. Everything went away with the foreclosure crisis. But from 2010, longest economic expansion ever. And in a single month, we lost all that job. Now jobs are coming back, but we are only halfway there. We need another 8 million jobs to get us back. I want you to focus on the red line. Year 2000, 2010, and the lockdown. This is the US, so you can get a better feel of what's happening in your market. So this is the Quad City area. So in Quad City, you never really had a strong job creation, especially post-pandemic, post-financial crisis. From 2010 to 2020, essentially no job creation, even as the rest of the country were creating jobs. Then you went down and you are trying to come back up again. So this is the Quad City area, which covers Iowa along with Illinois. If you look at the nearby cities, Cedar Rapids, they're actually had job creation staying above the red line. Again, use the red line as a reference. Then you look at Iowa City, it's a small college town, but it's consistently above the red line. Des Moines, consistently above the red line. Then you go to across the river, Illinois. Peoria and Rockford, similar sized city, and essentially no job creation and a little downward pattern. So I don't know whether this is Illinois versus Iowa part, and with a Quad City right in the middle, whether you are picking up half of Iowa, half of Illinois, and hence you are not seeing anything. So what I'm observing is that clearly interior Iowa, they're creating jobs in Cedar Rapids, in Iowa City, in Des Moines. And in Illinois, Rockford, Peoria, they're losing jobs. And Quad City is showing sort of right in between patterns. Sort of interesting observation. Now let's look at the forecast for home sales in 2021. So what's going to happen in terms of the industry revenue? First quarter, we're tallying up the data. It looks to be up about 10 to 15% in home sales. That's almost, as we are tallying up the data. Second quarter, it will be up about 40% from 1 year before. And you shake your head and say, whoa, that's way too much. Then you have to remember second quarter of last year, it was a lockdown period, low number to compare with. And you say, oh yeah, that makes sense. So this spring buying season, we have it. Last year, we missed the spring buying season. Third quarter, essentially no change. Fourth quarter, home sales are a little lower because of higher mortgage rates. So assuming that my forecast is correct on mortgage rates, it's gonna squeeze away some of the buyers, so sales will be lower. So what does this translate into for the annual 2021? Annual 2021 home sales will pop out 10% higher in 2021 versus 2020. And then you say, well, let me think about that for a second. And the big contributor is spring buying season. This year we have it, last year we did not. And that's why we have that little popping out in home sales. So best performance in home sales since 2006. So very good numbers on the figure. The other trend is that office leasing activity continued to weaken. So some of the realtors who practice commercial real estate, I mean, they are facing challenges. Anything to do with warehouse, they're doing well, but small business, retail shop or office, quite a difficult circumstance. And the question is now being raised, is office leasing ever going to come back in any meaningful way? Because office workers have demonstrated they can work from home productively. Chicago skyline, beautiful skyline. It is all empty as people are working from home. They're still paying office rents, by the way, but people are not coming to office. So even with vaccination, the question becomes, do all the CEOs say back to normal, 5 days a week, come to downtown Chicago? Or do they say, I'm not sure what the new policy will be. Let's do trial and error. Maybe it's going to be 3 days a week, come to office, and other 2 days, maybe Mondays and Friday, work from home. And if that's the case where people do not have to commute so frequently, people may say, I want to have a home farther out in the exurbs or second, third level ring counties because I don't have to do the commuting drive anymore. And some people may even say, even going to Iowa, I'm not too concerned if I have to come to Chicago downtown only 1 or 2 days a week or 1 or 2 days a month. So you may begin to see more people seeking affordability or even quieter life out further away. So we will see how the dynamics of working from home flexibility changes office demand and how office worker who technically has a job in Chicago, but their residence, it could be in Iowa. That's a possibility. And let's see how this trend could develop steadily over the years. I mean, you may be seeing 1 or 2 families now, but it could be in the hundreds of families, say 1 year from now or 2 years from now, as this trend becomes more permanent as people see it. So my final slide is just the numbers, the forecast numbers to just wrap it up. In 2020, the middle column, low mortgage rates, 3.0% average. New home sales, whatever the builders were building that could sell it. I know they're facing challenges on the lumber prices, but tack on that additional lumber price into the price of home, people are still buying it. Existing home sales, second half surge led to the overall growth in existing home sales. Prices strong, so industry revenue grew 15%. 2021, mortgage rate will be higher budget deficit, inflation, all that contributing. New home sales, again, builders build it, just put an escalation clause on material costs, people are still buying it. And existing home sales, I went through the logic as to why it would be up 10%. Prices in no danger of any decline. I wish home price growth moderate to only 3% a year, but we are in a housing shortage, so prices will continue to rise 7%, even as some buyers retreat in the fourth quarter. So prices are in no danger of declining. So industry revenue will be up roughly 17%. So this is a good backdrop for you to conduct business. I know there are many new members in the industry, which makes it more competitive, but best to you in this outlook. And thank you again, President Katie, for inviting me to share some of my thoughts with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.